Hello there! Well, this video is going to be covering my fall 2023 classes, both online and that are done in person at the Yarn and Quilt Shop in Between Stitches in Livermore, California. For those of you that aren't local to Livermore, California, I'm going to start off with the online classes first and then move on into the in-person classes. So let's talk about online classes. I'm slowly building out my repertoire of online classes. I've been primarily teaching in person for years and now moving into the online space a little bit more. And I just wanted to say that all the classes I'm referencing in this video, the links can be found in the show notes below. That way you can go and check out more information. A lot of these classes have more detailed lists, supply lists, and such. Online class number 1, KnitCompanion. Actually, this is a two-part class. KnitCompanion is an app that some of you might have already heard about. And in part 1 of the class, we go over the very basics. We get you started with it, pulling in your patterns from Ravelry or Dropbox or your device, and how to use the basic functions of KnitCompanion. What is KnitCompanion? KnitCompanion is an awesome app that has changed my knitting life. In fact, I don't knit really anything without using KnitCompanion unless it's super easy. Like my same sock my vanilla sock that I do all the time, I don't use KnitCompanion for that because I have the pattern in my head. But anytime that I am knitting a new pattern to me or a pattern that I don't have memorized, which is, pretty much all of them, I use KnitCompanion. KnitCompanion helps me not have to worry about where I left my notes on a piece of paper. I don't use up printer paper and waste ink and paper. It's all digital and it allows me to make notes that don't get lost. I don't have to remember things that I tell myself to remember, which I can't. So I just put them into KnitCompanion and it remembers for me. I also, as an Apple user, I have an iPad and an iPhone. It syncs between the two instantly. If you have an Android device, you could do the same thing through using a Dropbox or some sort of cloud like Google Drive. And so it is just an amazing thing. I could be here all day telling you about all the cool features with this app, and I won't. I'll save you that. But the show notes below have links to the two classes, the basics and then beyond the basics. And beyond the basics gets into really cool things. So if you're a chart knitter or if you like to have, there's like a complicated pattern where you're working on more than one thing at a time. For example, let's say you're doing, decreases down the sleeve on your sweater, but you also need to keep a pattern going, because there's decreasing and there's also a pattern going on. So every X amount of rows, you need to make sure that you do the decrease row. But meanwhile, you're working on a pattern, for example, lace or a cable, such. This software puts it all into one beautiful page for you, and you can just basically work your rows, and you don't have to remember that every 8th row you need to do a decrease or an increase. And you don't have to remember that when you get down a certain amount of like maybe 2 inches left to your desired length, that you need to stop and switch needles. You can have it to where the thing sets it up and tells you everything, and your brain can just think about wonderful knitting projects that you'll do in the future. So if you haven't heard of KnitCompanion, I think you should check it out. And if you have heard of KnitCompanion and you don't think you're using all the bells and whistles, I think you should check out this class as well. All right, that was KnitCompanion. KnitCompanion 1 and KnitCompanion 2. The other online course that is almost ready, this has been a labor of love because I'm actually building out a platform for all my students to be able to access all of their handouts and their video tutorials. So if you've taken any classes from me in the past, the idea is that you won't have to really hold on to those anymore, and you just have this one platform that you can go and access those. So with that being said, the Ravelry class, that is the next class that's coming out, there's going to be a basics and then there's going to be a beyond the basics class, just like KnitCompanion. With the basics class, we go over, like, for those of you that are brand spanking new to Ravelry or have never really used, you have an account. You've looked around. You might have purchased a pattern or two. But other than that, you haven't really delved into what Ravelry has for you. It's an amazing amazing resource. In fact, it is the resource for all things fiber arts. So if you're looking to learn a little bit more about it, then Ravelry The Basics is a great opportunity, a great class for you. And if you're familiar with Ravelry, but you've never really delved into it, it's a level like, I don't know, how do I properly set up my stash? How do I properly set up a project page? What do I do when I have some yarn that I've used, but I still have some left? How do I edit my stash? And more. There's an advanced, I'm looking for this pattern, and the yarn they're asking for me to use is no longer available. How do I look for a good alternative? Or vice versa. I have this yarn, I need to find a pattern for it. How do I find a pattern that might be a good choice for this yarn? So those are more advanced searches, and those will be found in the Ravelry Beyond the Basics class. These classes, you'll see that there's a waiting list, and it's not a waiting list like there's only so many people that are going to get into with this class. It's just that I haven't launched it yet, but it's coming super soon. Like within a week from me actually posting this video, okay? So I want to just take a moment to explain the type of online classes that you would find me providing. First off would be a live class. It would be on live, most likely using Zoom, the students and myself, or if I have another co-teacher, we would be live and you'd be watching the course live and participating live in the class. Did I say live? And then for an example, the KnitCompanion, The Basics and Beyond the Basics, those are live classes. We're watching real time, okay? And you're learning real time. Then there would be the opposite side of that, which would be considered kind of like an on-demand. All of my content is pre-recorded for you, and you can watch them when you want, as long as you want, and over as many times as you want. You can skip ahead, fast forward. There would be handouts or transcripts included, and maybe even some homework involved regarding maybe depending on the class. But an example of the on-demand style class would be the Ravelry class, The Basics and Beyond the Basics. And you can search by key terms as well. The platform I'm using is going to allow everything to be searchable. So if you're having a hard time finding something, or you want to watch a specific part and you don't remember where it's at in the class, you can just search using keywords and it will take you to that. And then there's going to be a hybrid type of class, which will both be live and pre-recorded. And an example of that will be my Hawaiian Kappa class, where I teach Hawaiian quilting, hand quilting, and that class is in the works. It takes time to put all this stuff together. That class would have live components where we would be joining on Zoom live, and I would be teaching and doing some instruction there, answering questions and such. And then there would be homework, which would for you to be going and watching the video tutorials, which would have up close images and or videos of me doing the techniques that we're working on in the class. And then there would be also live Q&A sessions where we'll join after a certain amount of time. And for the students who have questions, I go ahead and answer them to you live. So there's all live, hybrid, live, and recorded, and then there's going to be all pre-recorded. All right, so for those of you that don't live locally to Livermore, California, I thank you for watching. I hope you join one of my online classes in the future. There's more to come. And for those of you that are local, let's get started with our local classes. The first one is called Building Blocks. For those of you that have not attended this class, Building Blocks is a 7-month class. We meet once a month. And each month we will be working on 2 blocks that go into a full blanket. And every month we start with 2 blocks. We work them at the same time. So we'll be knitting 1 block, part of it in class, and we'll start the second block in class. That way you can work your way through the material. Every block has new techniques. This class is ideal for people who are new to knitting. So beginners, you have started knitting, you do need to know how to do the basics. So I would suggest my Learning to Knit class first. And then after that, Building Blocks is a fantastic second project or third project or fourth project, depending on how much knitting you've gotten on your belt or beyond. Some of you have just been knitting for years, but you haven't moved beyond just the knit and purl stitch, and you're contemplating, should I learn cables or lace or slip stitches, this is a great class for you. I teach building blocks at least twice a year, sometimes 3 or 4 times a year. One thing that you'll want to note is that you can do makeup sessions with this class. So for example, 7 months is a big window, right? And there's bound to be 1 month or 2 that you might have to miss the class. Don't worry about it. Don't fret. You can do a makeup session for free, attending one of the other sessions in the future. So for example, if you know you're going to miss month 3, the next time Building Blocks runs its course, you are more than welcome to jump in to month 3's class. No problem at all. All right, so that's Building Blocks. We're going in alphabetical order for my classes. The next class I would like to talk about is Colorwork. And I would say this is an intermediate class. This is going to be the basics of stranded colorwork, specifically Fair Isle. So in this class, the main things that you'll be learning, it's a 3-week class. You're going to learn how to knit stranded colorwork with both hands. You'll be holding 2 different colors of yarn, one in one hand and one in the other. And you'll also be learning how to design your own Fair Isle project. You'll have the option to knit a cowl or a hat for this class, but you're going to get the foundations on how to prepare yourself to knit any kind of Fair Isle pattern you would actually like to design. Once I unlocked the doors of stranded colorwork, I was so excited. There's so many cool patterns out there that have those beautiful colorful stranded motifs. You could do that. Once you take this class, you will have the foundation. You will be able to do it. It's so much fun. So if you ever really liked looking at those beautiful colorwork sweaters or hats or gloves, you name it, this is a great class. Okay, next class. So actually, this is a 2-parter. We have the Fix It Workshop Part 1 and the Fix It Workshop Part 2. In Part 1, you're going to learn how to read your knitting. You're going to learn how to do some of the basic stitches and how to read them, because a lot of times we need to go back and kind of look at when we're looking at our work and we're like, oh, did I do that row? Did I do that stitch? I'm going to teach you on how to identify stitches properly so that you don't rip back too far, or that you know if you've made a mistake and you need to fix it. We're going to learn we're going to knit a couple swatches. Pre-class homework, there's going to be some swatches that you knit, and in that we're also going to start fixing some of our mistakes, drop stitches and unintentional yarn over fixes. And then we're even going to get into some things like dropping down multiple stitches within multiple rows and working our way back up and fixing them, because sometimes we have to do that. And then also I'm going to teach you the 3 types of lifelines that you can use to prevent having to rip back or make mistakes in the future. So the first class is kind of like your foundations, and then after you have taken that class, and you have to complete the first one, you can sign up for the Fix It Workshop Part 2. And in that class, we get into fixing more complicated things like cables and lace patterns, and how to read your cable and lace pattern so that you can rip back and fix something if you've made a mistake. Okay, so that one's a little bit more challenging, obviously, but sometimes it's just necessary that we know how to do these things. And I don't ever want to have any of one of my students feel like, oh, I just can't fix this project. I want you to feel like, okay, Nicole said it's just knitting, it's just yarn, I can fix this. And even if I have to rip back a little bit to fix something, if in the end result I'm happy with my project, that's why we do it, right? The next class is Intro to Sock Knitting. I love knitting socks, and I knit socks all the time. In fact, there's some project bags sitting over here, and I bet you $1,000,000, at least 1 or 2 of those is socks. And I have them in my car so that if I'm ever stuck and I have time to knit on something, I can just grab my sock. I go for walks when it's not 100 and something degrees outside. I walk and I can knit a sock and walk at the same time. And I love wearing socks. I love wearing hand knit socks. In fact, I no longer purchase any other socks except for maybe my like running socks that I wear when I'm working out, those kind of socks. All the socks that I have in my sock drawer are all hand knit by me. I don't purchase any other socks anymore. I love the feel of hand knit socks on my feet. They're comfortable. They're like gorgeous. They're warm, but they're not too warm. Oh, they're fantastic. So I could go on forever about socks. They are my like favorite project to just pick up and knit. So with that being said, in this class, you will learn how to knit top-down socks, and we'll go over traditional heel flap and gusset. If you have already knit socks before and learned a traditional heel flap and gusset, and you wanted to learn a new heel, I will also be teaching the Fish Lips Kiss heel, but you do have to purchase the pattern. I think it's $3, and I will run you through that. That is my favorite heel. It's a short row heel, and it's a great class. The sock class is, again, 3, just like the Colorwork class. It's 3 classes, 3 sessions. And it's a ton of fun. And what I love about socks too is you can get a whole project out of a single skein. I sometimes get, because I have small feet, I can sometimes get 2 pairs of socks out of a skein, especially if I knit shorty socks. So it's a great stash buster. If you have that one skein of fingering weight yarn, socks all the way. Okay, next class. Knitting in the round. Knitting in the round is also a great class to take after you've just learned how to knit. So this now gets you, most times when we learn to knit, we learn to knit flat because we need to learn the knit stitch and the purl stitch. The next step is to really learn how to knit in the round, because now we are unlocking all of the circumference patterns out there, like hats, gloves, socks, sweater, because you have sleeves, cowls, all those kind of things. So with learning to knit in the round, we'll be knitting a hat. And in this hat class, you'll also be learning how to knit a cable up the side. So you get a little bonus of using a cable needle. So one of my most popular class, so actually the sock class and my knitting in the round class are super fun, popular classes. And I hope that you join that class if that's the next step that you're ready for. And now I feel weird starting with like other classes and not starting with the learning to knit class, but I had to go alphabetical. Learning to knit, the 101, the basics of knitting. If you are brand spanking new to knitting, or you crochet and you were like dabbled a little in knitting, or if you started knitting a long time ago when you were a kid, or you were taught by your mother or your grandmother and you don't really remember a lot about it, or you taught yourself online and you feel like you're a hot mess and you want some instruction on how to do it properly, I'd love to have you join my Learning to Knit class. This is a 4-session class, and we go over the basics of knitting. At the end of this class, you should be pretty confident on how to do the knit and purl stitch. You also will know a couple increases and decreases to get yourself out of a little bit of a mess if you all of a sudden have more stitches than you should, or vice versa. And it'll get you a great foundation for moving on to new techniques in knitting. And the last class is the My First Sweater class. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's your first sweater. If you have attempted to knit a sweater before and was super unsuccessful, or you started it and you didn't know how to finish it, this is probably a good class for you. We're going to go over knitting the basics of a sweater. We're going to be doing a seamless sweater, and we'll be knitting top down. This has raglan sleeves on it, which is a really easy, great pattern to start with. This course actually spans over a few months to give you time to knit your sweater, and we meet 4 times during this class. You will have some pre-homework to have you swatch your sweater fabric to make sure that we're getting gauge. So you will learn about gauge, how to read gauge, and how to appropriately size your pattern, choosing the size for your pattern with using your gauge. And then we move into casting on the collar and work into the increases. And then another class we will split for the sleeves, but we'll knit the body. Then they'll be picking up for the sleeves and knitting the sleeves. And then there will be the final class where we kind of work on finishing. You know, here's the thing with this class, a sweater is a commitment, especially a first sweater. And so if you do not finish your sweater in the class, that's totally fine. The final class is really just to see where everybody's at and help them whatever point they're in. So don't feel like you have to commit to finishing the sweater, but it's important that you put some effort into it so you get the most out of the class. And then there's a couple workshops that aren't actually on the calendar right now because I'm working around some yarn that's going to be coming into the shop, but they're seasonal. So, but basically we're going to have a fall workshop where we get together and we knit some really cute fall little decor, like little acorns, some leaves, and then pumpkins. Don't want to forget the pumpkins. And then for the other workshop, it'll be closer to the holidays where we can knit little socks, little sweaters, and snowflakes. So they're going to be like ornament size, super cute. So keep your eyes peeled in my newsletter. If you're not part of the newsletter, feel free to click on the link below to my website and sign up for my newsletter. But we're going to be having some extra workshops during the holiday season to help kind of keep us knitting something fun and something really quick too. These are all small little knits. It's really satisfying and gratifying when we actually get to knit something quickly and put it to use. All right. Well, thanks for staying and watching. I really appreciate it. Feel free to add some comments below. I'd love to see what you guys are working on, or if you're planning on taking any of my classes, or if you've taken one of my classes I mentioned before, I'd love to hear any comments about it. I appreciate you guys so much. You're the reason I do what I do. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.